Hi students, Mrs. Girot here, and if you remember I told you that I was going to be out of the office this week, but I got a little chance to make this video for you for the Unit 7 test. So let's go ahead and get started on that. You can get there a couple of different ways. You can go into the plan, and you know I tell you to click on that week view and click on the Unit 7 test that's due. That will actually take you right to the test. The other option is to click on Content. This is where everything that's in the plan is located, and here is Unit 7. If you click on that major folder, there's a subfolder down at the bottom. If you click on that, there's Unit 7 test. You can right click and open that in a new window, and then you want to get that started and size that down so that it fits. That looks good. Not sure where my scroll bar is at. There it is. Okay, so if you want your scroll bar. Okay, and then you can go back here and click on 7.01 and click on the very first unit introduction proportion. Size this window down. Yay. Perfect. So you can see all of your test and toggle over here, well, all of the textbook, and to be able to toggle over here and see your questions. Very good. Let's read all of the questions. The questions in this class always go out of order, so you want to know what you're looking for. What series of numbers can help an artist create the golden mean in an artwork? Is it fractal formula, Heretic Scale, Fibonacci Sequence, or Vitruvian Man? Number 2, what is proportion? How lines are used to create a feeling of excitement, a type of fractional perspective that makes an artwork seem flat, a way of combining paint colors to create contrast, how large something is compared to the things around it. Question 3. Hiroshige trained as a woodblock paint artist while he was working in what job? Teacher, firefighter, fisherman, or architect? Question 4. An artwork that highlights the most important object by making it the largest thing is using what technique? The Fibonacci Sequence, Vitruvian Man, Heretic Scale, or the golden mean? Question 5. What does it mean for an object to be out of proportion? The object is proportionately larger or smaller than it would normally be. The object is meant to be displayed outside. The object uses proportion to create a realistic illusion of depth. The object mimics geometrical proportions that occur in nature. Question 6. Which of the following artists used proportion in a realistic way? André Derain, Sir John Tenniel, Marie-Denise Villers, or Noke artists? Question 7. Which of the following techniques could you use to make a building look farther away from a person in an artwork? Make the building's doors the same height as the person? Give the building's windows unrealistic proportions? Make the building smaller? Make the person smaller? Question 8. Which artist created the Vitruvian Man? André Derain, Marie-Denise Villers, Sir John Tenniel, or Leonardo da Vinci? Question 9. In a Noke terracotta sculpture, which body parts are larger than they are on normal humans? Legs and feet, torsos, heads and faces, or hands and arms? Question 10. Which of the following books is Sir John Tenniel famous for illustrating? Don Quixote, Alice in Wonderland, The Cat in the Hat, or Winnie the Pooh? Perfect. So we'll be looking for those answers. Proportion. In this section, you will learn about different kinds of proportion, learn about how different artists use proportion in art and design, import 2 bitmap images, trace the images using the trace bitmap command or the Bezier tool, and scale the images to change their size proportionally to each other. Overview. In the lesson Proportion Overview, you'll learn about proportion and how it's used in different types of artwork designs. Proportion. Proportion is how large something is compared to the things around it. I know that was one of what is proportion? How large something is compared to the things around it. That was question 2. Proportion can either be the way that things are sized within the parts of a whole object or the way that 2 or more separate objects compare in size. Proportion can be used to create the illusion of space, create points of focus, or establish a distinctive style. Let us learn about how proportion can be used with specific art elements. Lines and shapes. Lines and shapes are the main tools a 2-dimensional artist uses to create proportion in an artwork. In a realistic painting or drawing, artists use proportion to create an illusion of depth by making closer objects larger than objects that are farther away. Proportion can also be used to emphasize parts of an artwork non-realistically. For example, an artist might draw a person's face proportionally larger than their body in order to focus on the person's expression or to create a silly or monstrous effect. When an object or part of an object is proportionally larger or smaller than it would normally be, it is out of proportion. Hey, that was a question. Okay, what does it mean to be out of proportion? Where was that one? Here it is, number 5. It's the object is proportionally larger or smaller than what it would normally be. Very good. Even if an artist isn't painting a recognizable object, they can still use proportion to create points of focus in an artwork. For example, an abstract artist might use a large triangle that attracts the viewer's attention because of its size. By using systematic and geometrical proportion, artists can mimic some of the geometrical proportions that occur in nature. You'll learn more about this soon. Form and space. Artists who work in 3 dimensions use form and space to create proportion in their artwork. In a realistic sculpture, the proportions of the object, person, or animal need to be accurate, even if the sculpture itself is larger or smaller than the real thing. Even if the form of a sculpture is non-realistic, the use of realistic proportions can give a hint as to the subject of the sculpture. Like a painter working on a canvas, 3-dimensional artists often need to think about the space where their artwork will be. And an artwork in a small space will have a different feel than that same artwork in an unenclosed space. In other words, the proportions of a 3-dimensional artwork will seem different depending on where it is and what it is surrounded by. Let's take a look at this checkpoint, shall we? Select the part of the image that's out of proportion. Now, I know that we are used to seeing caricatures and emojis and types of cartoons where the head is large, but the head on this is way too big. Look at how small the feet are and how small their hands are. Take your hand and cover it over your face. How much does your hand take up? I bet you this person's hand, even with the fingers outspread, would only take up a little tiny portion of her face. And we can even go back to page 3 of that last unit and take a look at this sculpture. Look at the proportion of the head in comparison to the shoulders and everything else, and now look at the proportion of this head. You can see that it is a lot bigger. Excellent. Proportion usage. artists use proportion in many ways. Let us learn about different ways of creating proportion and how these ways are used to plan an artwork's design. Scale. Scale is how large something is compared to a representation of it. In order for an artist to create an accurate representation of something, the scale of the artwork needs to be established. For example, if you were to draw a house at a 1 inch to 1 foot scale, then every inch in the house plans would match up to 1 foot in the house. Drawing things accurately to scale is most important for people such as architects, engineers, and sculptors, whose drawings are intended to be used to make an object at a specific size. Painters don't need to worry as much about creating exact products like an engineer or an architect, but if they want to make a realistic depiction of something, the closer it is to a consistent scale, the more realistic the painting will look. Scale is often written as 2 numbers separated by a colon. For example, a 1 inch to 10 foot scale would be written as 1 inch to 10 feet. This means that for every 1 inch in a drawing, there would be 10 feet in the full-size object. If the drawing were of a 10-foot tall doorway, the door would be 1 inch high on the page. The golden mean. The golden mean is a specific mathematical ratio used in architecture, painting, sculpture, and many other arts. The golden mean is also called the golden ratio. The golden mean is a scale that's about 1 to 1.618. This scale is a specific proportion that occurs in nature and has inspired many artists and designers to use it in their artwork. The golden mean is often visualized as a series of spirals made from squares and rectangles arranged using the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers that build on one another. Each number in this series is equal to the 2 previous numbers added together. These are the first 10 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. 0, 0, 1. 0 plus 1 equals 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 2 plus 3 equals 5. 5 plus 8 equals 13. 8 plus 13 equals 21. 13 plus 21 equals 34. And that's how the Fibonacci sequence works. All right, so kind of went through that together already. The Fibonacci sequence is infinite because you can always add the newest number to the 2 previous numbers. The Fibonacci sequence is related to the golden mean. If you divide one of the numbers in the sequence by the previous number, you get a number close to, that's right, 1.618. The higher you are in the Fibonacci sequence when you divide those numbers, the closer to 1.618 the result will be. For example, if you divide 21 by 13, it's about 1.615. If you divide 34 by 21, it's about 1.619. This is why the Fibonacci sequence can be used to visualize the golden mean's ratio of 1 to 1.618. Artwork and architectural plans drawn with lengths and widths using the Fibonacci sequence numbers express the golden mean ratio. The golden mean has been used for thousands of years in architecture from ancient Egypt, India, Greece, and Rome, among others. The golden mean ratio can be used to make a rectangle called the golden rectangle and a spiral called the golden spiral. These shapes were often used in planning and building religious structures and are often referred to as sacred geometry. The spiraling shape of a chambered nautilus shell is an example of the golden ratio occurring in nature. Let's look. I know that there were some questions about the golden mean. Let's check them out. Okay, what series of numbers can help an artist create the golden mean in an artwork? The Fibonacci sequence. Let's see here. Next. No. Getting there. we're getting there. You probably know the answer to this one. Which of the following techniques could you use to make a building look farther away from a person in artwork? Make the building smaller, right? Larger objects in the foreground look closer than smaller objects in the distance, right? And we're getting to the last one. I know there was another Fibonacci. Oh, maybe I was wrong. Okay, we're good. The Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man is a famous drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, which shows the proportions of a human man inside a square and a circle. The drawing is based on the writings of an ancient Roman architect named Vitruvius, who wrote about the ideal proportions of the human body. For example, Vitruvius wrote that a man's outstretched arms are equal to his height. And in Leonardo da Vinci's drawings, the length of the outstretched arms is equal to the man's height. So if we went from this point here to that point, that would be the same length as the height. It doesn't look like it. It's a little bit visually cryptic, huh? The image of the Vitruvian Man is used all over the world in medical professions and organizations. It's also used by NASA on a spacesuit patch given to spacewalking astronauts. Let's see, wasn't there a question about the Vitruvian Man? Okay, don't think we got that one. The Heretic Scale is a non-realistic use of scale that's used to highlight the most important object in an artwork by making it the largest thing. There we go. Question 4. An artwork that highlights the most important object by making it the largest thing is the Heretic Scale. For example, in a painting of a king at court, a hieratic scale might make the king on his throne the largest thing in the painting to portray the king as the most important person at court, as in this illustration. In a medieval court, all of the activity of the people in the court would center on the king. He would be the focus of all their attention. The king becomes a real-life focal point. Hieratic scale is an attempt to show the increased attention the king receives compared to the other people in the painting. Hieratic scale is often used in religious and strongly symbolic artwork to emphasize what's important in an artwork. This 19th century Indian painting shows one of the founders of the Sikh religion surrounded by the 10 gurus of the Sikhs. Even if you didn't know who he was, hieratic scale makes it clear who the most important figure in the painting is. And the caption is Tanjore style painting from the late 19th century showing the 10 Sikh gurus by Bala and by Mardana. Beautiful. Looks like we have another checkpoint. Excellent. Given what you know about hieratic scale, which of the people in this image is the most important? Oh, is it the woman with the umbrella? The man on the bike? The man with the boxes? The woman with the wheeled luggage? Or the man in the hat? It's the largest one, right? That's how we create that emphasis and importance. It's making that figure the largest. Perfect. Proportion has been used in many ways throughout the history of art and architecture. Let us learn more about specific artists and their use of proportion. André Derain was an early 20th century French painter who co-founded Fauvism with Henri Matisse. Remember, Fauvism meant wild beasts? In his painting, Portrait of a Man with a Newspaper, Derain uses proportion to paint a slightly unsettling portrait of a man interrupted while reading a newspaper. The proportions of the man's head and face compared to his long torso thin legs and giant newspaper seem slightly off, which gives the man an otherworldly look. The large newspaper and the puffed-up-looking suit are a way for the artist to show that those are important to the man. The man has a small head and mouth and seems annoyed, while he fits perfectly into his chair in a fancy lobby or theater. The human body has a proportion to which human beings are familiar. By tweaking the proportions of the newspaper reading man, Derain created a strange and unrealistic portrait. Derain used proportion in this painting as a way of showing what the man is and what the artist thinks of him. So is this realism? Nope, not realistic, right? All right. Hiroshige was a 19th century Japanese woodblock print or ukiyo-e artist who was a contemporary and competitor of the artist Hokusai. You might be familiar with Hokusai's wave. Like his father, Hiroshige worked as a firefighter protecting Edo Castle. I remember it asking that question. Okay, where is it? Hiroshige trained as a woodblock print artist while he worked in what job? Firefighter. His duties as a firefighter were undemanding, which allowed him the time to train as an artist. This print from his collection, 100 Famous Views of Edo, shows an eagle flying over Jumatsubo Plain near, Jumatsubo Plain near Fukagawa. The proportionately large eagle, compared to the small trees, hills, and mountains, moves the eagle strongly into the foreground of the image. By increasing an object's proportion compared to what's around it, artists can make that object the point of focus in their artwork, such as the eagle in this print. Nok culture. About 2,500 years ago, the Nok culture created the oldest known examples of terracotta statues in Africa, south of the Sahara Desert. Terracotta is an unglazed, clay-based ceramic that has been used to make sculpture and pottery all over the world for thousands of years. Terracotta is easier and cheaper to work with than things like metal or stone. Nok sculptures have a distinctive and unique style with proportionately small hands and bodies and large heads and faces. This emphasizes the expression and character of the statue. The distinctive Nok style spanned several hundred years and was found in statues over a large area. The Nok terracotta statues are an example of the way in which a specific use of proportion can create an easily recognizable style. Is it realistic? No. Sir John Tenniel was a well-known 19th century English illustrator and cartoonist. He is most famous for his illustrations in Lewis Carroll's books, Alice in Wonderland, and Through the Looking Glass. Oh, I know that was one of our questions. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Which of the following question 10 books is Sir John Tenniel famous for illustrating? All right. Before working on Alice in Wonderland, Tenniel was well known as a book illustrator and as a political cartoonist for the humorous Punch magazine. In this illustration from Through the Looking Glass, Alice is meeting the character Humpty Dumpty, a giant egg from the children's nursery rhyme of the same name. Tenniel uses proportion to emphasize Humpty Dumpty's absurdity, with his tiny eyes, legs, and arms, along with his ridiculously oversized nose, mouth, head, and torso. Alice's more normal proportions and size contrast vividly with Humpty Dumpty's cartoonish look. Tenniel's use of extreme proportion matches well with the silly tone of Carroll's book. Marie Denise Villers, and since I'm seeing that she's French, it would probably be pronounced Villiers. Marie Denise Villiers was an early 19th century French painter who specialized in portraits. Not much is known of her life beyond the members of her family and who she married. Her most famous painting, Young Woman Drawing, was thought for a long time to be the work of another artist, Jacques-Louis David. Villiers painted this possible self-portrait using realistic proportion to show a young woman drawing and also to show the distance between her and the man and woman in the distance. They're very tiny, can hardly see them. Her use of proportion helps to give a sense of how far away the couple is, as well as the size of the building through the window, the artist's distance from the window, and the size of the window. When proportions are done realistically, artists can give attention to other parts of an image because the proportion isn't distracting. This painting focuses on light and depth, as well as emphasizing the loneliness or isolation of the young woman. I know I saw that question. Let's see, where was that? Oh, in Noak's terracotta sculpture, which body parts are larger than they are in normal humans? Oh, remember, it was the heads and faces. They liked that expressive style. Perfect. Which artist created the Vitruvian Man? Oh, do you remember? That's Leonardo da Vinci. All right, let's see here. Question 6. Which of the following artists used proportion in a realistic way? That's our Marie-Denise Villiers. Checkpoint time. All right, based on the artwork you've seen in this lesson, who made this artwork? Okay, a color print of a crashing wave with Mount Fuji in the background. Would this be Marie-Denise Villiers, Sir John Tenniel, André Derain, Hiroshige, or No Culture? Well, Hiroshige. It's Japanese. This is definitely a Japanese print. Foreground and background proportions. Proportions can emphasize foreground and background images in different ways. Having a large image in the foreground and a small image in the background will make the foreground image look close and the background image look distant. This is especially true if the small background image is something that would be much larger than the foreground image if they were next to each other. For example, if you had a large image of a knight in the bottom right corner of an image looking at a small image of a castle in the top left corner of the image, it would seem like the knight was looking at a castle in the distance. Scaling the image of the knight to be smaller than the castle would make the knight and castle look closer together. You'll learn about a tool that can scale objects in Inkscape. All right, let's check to see. Did we answer all of our questions? Question 1, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect, we're done. Save your responses and submit your quiz. Good job.